Welcome to Madlit Musings, the podcast where you get to eavesdrop on your favorite authors without getting caught. I've been stoked to have authors like Angela Hunt, Bill Myers, Nicole Deese, Tessa Afshar, comedian Bob Smiley, and more on the show, and this year I have another great lineup of storytellers and truth-sayers. If you love to eavesdrop at coffee shops like I do, this is the podcast for you. It's where we get real, we get tough, we laugh, and we might even cry. It's where we meet authors on a different level, where every story and podcast episode has its own heartbeat. So hang out with me today. I'm Jamie Jo Wright, your host at Madlit Musings. This is your podcast for real chats with real authors about real life. Hey everyone, it is Jamie Jo Wright here at Madlit Musings, and this is the podcast where we invite you to eavesdrop on a conversation with me and the author I'm chatting with over coffee. Although we don't have coffee today.
No, not today.
It's the evening, but I have Ruth Douthitt here with me today. Hey, Ruth.
Hey.
Now, you've been on here before, and we've talked about your Italy series, and that's cool, but that's not what we're talking about today. We're talking ghosts and haunted orphanages.
Hey, we're going back in time to 1922 to a haunted orphanage. Wow.
Wow. Yeah. Okay. So let's just kind of dive right in because you know me, I love anything haunted.
Yes.
Which probably asks and opens wide the door for 1,000 questions. But when it comes to a book, I should clarify, I love everything haunted. It's just fun. It's fun to be creepy.
Yeah, I think so too. It's fun to be scared, right? To have
But I
that
think
little
it's
creepy
almost
feeling.
more fun when it's set in that historical era.
Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah, less so than like today when it becomes more Stephen King.
Yeah, I mean, most ghost stories will take you back to the past. Even if it is in modern time, it's like in an old house or an old hotel, so.
Yeah. Okay. So tell us about this. This book is called The Secrets of Worthington Orphanage.
Yeah.
This is actually a prequel. So kind of give us the whole map of how this works.
Sure. Back in around 2012, I wrote a book called The Children Under the Ice, and that led to two more books, The Children in the Garden and The Children of Manor House. And it was set in the 1970s, and it's about this quirky group of kids who become ghost hunters, I guess. And they, with the help of ghosts, they solve crimes.
Okay.
And they find out that it's actually the victims of those crimes in their ghost forms who come back and say, hey, can you help us solve all crime? Because then we can rest in peace. Otherwise, we keep haunting and we have this unfinished business. So these quirky kids, they're like 12 years old, they take it upon themselves to solve these crimes. And in the very last book, The Children of Manor House, it's a good old-fashioned haunted house story.
Okay.
They actually find out a little bit more about these ghosts and the history of the town, in that there's this wicked woman named Ruby Worthington who ran an orphanage outside of town, but she was well beloved by the whole community because she was a philanthropist. She was involved in women's suffrage movements, and she gave all this money to charity. She was beloved, and the town library was named after her.
Okay.
But they come to find out that maybe there's more to her than they thought. And so the final book kind of leaves it at that. And so a lot of my readers, including who were my middle school students, they're like, Mrs. Douthitt, what happened at Worthington Orphanage? What's going on at Worthington Orphanage? As they kept challenging me, you should write that book. You should write a book about Worthington Orphanage.
There you go.
So I put it in the back of my mind and just put it off for about 10 years until last year for NaNoWriMo 2024. I decided to finally write the book. And I really had fun with that. I liked it.
Yeah.
It was a fun thing to go back to that time, with those quirky kids again, except now I'm taking you back to the history of the orphanage set in 1922, when this little girl named Darla Sue is dropped off there by her grandma because she and her brother are orphans now, and her grandma can't take care of her. Well, she heard about this amazing, wonderful orphanage called Worthington Orphanage. It had a great reputation, beautiful mansion, sprawling green lawns with horses, so the kids have it really great there. So she drops off little Darla Sue at this orphanage. But poor little Darla finds out that that's just all a facade, and that there's some creepy stuff going on there in this orphanage, and that Ruby Worthington although a philanthropist, she's kind of wicked and mean. And so
Mm-hmm.
it's about what Darla goes through. And then
Okay.
at the end, you see the connection to the Children of Manor House. You see how it
Yeah.
all comes together. So I think you could read it as a standalone, but it might make you want to pick up the children's series when you're done.
Hmm.
So
Now, if I were to like buy all 4 books, which one should I start? Like, what would be the ultimate way to read them?
The Children Under the Ice
Okay.
introduces you to Mikey Thompson and the town and kind of the history and his friends.
Hmm.
And then The Children in the Garden is book 2,
Hmm.
where they encounter a little girl ghost who kind of asks them for help in solving her crime.
Okay.
And they find out there's a little bit more to the town history. They're learning some of the dark secrets. And
Hmm.
then The Children of Manor House is the last book, and that kind of resolves everything, all the issues.
Okay. All right. Now, the characters in this book are children.
Mhm.
So is this is written for middle grade
Yeah,
or?
middle grade
Okay.
on up. I would say 12
Hmm.
years old on up. It gets kind
Okay.
of spooky.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It depends on your kid. If you have a mature 10-year-old, I think they could handle it. If they read
Sure.
at that level, can handle
Hmm.
spooky ghost stories,
Hmm.
dark basements, and whispers in the hall, you know? But I would recommend 12 years old on up. That's how Darla Sue, she's 10, but most of
Okay.
her friends are a little older.
Hmm.
So yeah. But yeah, it's written for middle grade, but it goes on up from there. I've had adults read it and they really liked it too. So
Oh, that's fun. That's fun. Are these books that are kind of neutral as far as spirituality? So it's like just a really good story, or are they? Because I know you write Christian novels too. Are they like from a Christian perspective, or how do you?
no, they're written for general fiction, but you can
Okay,
see the Christian themes in them.
sure.
And like Darla, she does pray, you know,
Hmm.
and things like that. There's like a glimpse of heaven and things like
Sure.
that, but they're not overtly Christian or anything. And but yeah, I mean, it's not horror at all.
No,
Definitely not
no.
horror
Yeah,
stories.
yeah.
But yeah, so I originally wrote them for general fiction,
Hmm.
but you can see some of the Christian
Yeah,
themes in there.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. That's
Justice,
cool.
you know, definitely fighting for justice. The truth
Yeah,
prevails, that kind of stuff, you know.
yeah. Kind of the good moral, ethical themes.
Yeah,
So you
exactly.
wanna have that in middle grade fiction.
Absolutely. I don't want just darkness.
No.
And, you know, it's easy to go there, darkness
Hmm.
and spooky and death and dying and all that. But
Right.
I wanted there to be hope, the hope of
Yeah.
justice and letting the truth be known. Because Ruby,
Hmm.
she's pretty wicked. She's pretty evil.
Yeah.
So I wanted
Yeah.
Darla to be that voice of hope.
Yeah. Now, why do you think it's important to have that juxtaposition between like the really evil character and the really hopeful character, especially when you're writing to the younger reader?
Yeah, you don't. I mean, it's so easy to go completely dark. And you walk in the bookstore sometimes, and the
Hmm.
YA section is so dark. You know,
Hmm.
vampires and all that stuff. That's easy. But I want my readers to see that. Yeah, at times it seems pretty hopeless for
Yeah.
little Darla
Hmm.
and sad. But there is that light of hope that comes through in the form of a little girl who's brought to the
Okay. Okay.
orphanage. And so I want to see that, I want readers to see that kids can fight, you know,
Yeah.
they can find those adults who will help them, those adults who will believe in them and
Mm.
come alongside them and help them. And that
Hmm.
kids have a voice and they can prevail in the
Hmm.
end. So
Hmm.
that's the hope of the story. But yeah, they will see the juxtaposition. The good versus evil is
Yeah.
very obvious here. Ooh, boy, there were times when I was writing, I thought, it just seems so hopeless. Oh my gosh, poor little Darla. I
I
better
know.
put in some good stuff in there. It's like, well,
Yeah.
you're writing the book, Ruth. You can
Right.
change
You do
it, you
whatever you
know?
want. Yeah. Yeah. Sometimes
So,
I write
yeah.
my books and I'm like, oh, that was dark. And then I'll be like, and that was in my mind. That's scary. Where did
Because
that come from?
yeah, I love haunted places. And I did a lot of
Hmm.
research on
Okay.
orphanages and hospitals, you know, those abandoned places.
Yes.
And they
Yeah.
are creepy and dark. And we have a few haunted hotels here in Arizona that
Okay.
have this history. And
Hmm.
so I could have just stayed there
Yeah.
and kind of leaned more toward horror and sold a lot of books, I'm sure, because there's that audience out there. But no, that's just not me. That's not who
Yeah.
I am. And
Yeah.
so, yeah.
Yeah. Keep the horror out of it. Just have the fun,
Yeah,
the creepy Scooby Doo kind of sneaking through the
exactly.
halls. type of thing, which is
Exactly.
fun. And probably more appropriate, honestly, for the younger
Yeah,
readers
I
too, so
think so
they're
too.
not getting gory horror,
Yeah.
jump scare. Jump scares are fun, but not
Yeah.
like
There's
jump
plenty of jump
slashers.
scares. Yeah. Yeah.
All right, so talk to me about you said it was 1922?
1922.
So what were orphanages like back then? Like we have this
Well,
image of orphanages, but what were they
yeah.
like?
Well, they were, sometimes converted churches or converted
Okay.
buildings like that, converted houses.
Mhm.
And some of them were set on sprawling lands because the land was donated to them, put in a trust and like donated to them by philanthropists, by wealthy people.
Right.
And so they were kind of nice, but not all of them. Some of the inner city ones were a little bit darker. But
Mhm.
if you look at the history of social work and sociology, mostly social work, that's how they came to be. And so a lot of times they were taken, hotels and smaller buildings were taken over and made into orphanages. So
Mhm.
there was benevolence behind it. It was a great idea, but unfortunately, you know,
Right.
funding sometimes falls short
Mhm.
and the kids have
Mhm.
to go without their
Right.
clothing, isn't all the best. And sometimes the older kids would not get adopted, and that's tragic.
Yeah.
And a
Yeah.
lot of times the age of kicking them out was like 16 years old, you know.
Oh, really?
Some
Okay.
Eastern European countries, Romania has that still, where the
Okay.
age of being bumped out and becoming, you know,
Yeah.
no longer a ward of the state is 16. That's young.
Yeah. Yeah. It is young.
So
Yeah.
yeah, I mean it started off as an excellent concept. The church did it first, and then social work came along and took over and helped.
Mhm.
So it's one of those things where it comes from the heart with all good intentions, but the
Mhm.
heart is wicked, right? And so these good intentions sometimes fall.
Right. Right. Well, and there's
So,
so many stories from even like historical true crime, so to speak, that
hmm
take you back to like orphanages where they, had the children, but they were doing it for the money and the
yes,
things they could earn from it. And
yeah,
then there were horrible things that happened to the children. And,
hmm
it's one thing to read about it in a book. It's another thing to go, oh, that really
I
happened.
know. Oh, it was heartbreaking to do some of the research
Yeah.
and the women's suffrage movement. So I know you did some research
Hmm.
about that, how women's rights were non-existent, and
Right.
so a lot of
Right.
times their kids were removed and put into these orphanages.
Hmm.
And it's tragic. It did
Yeah.
happen a lot of times. So,
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. All right. So when you were studying and researching, like the orphanages and places like that, were there any like real life orphanage haunted stories that you wanted to incorporate into this, or what did you find?
well, no, I didn't really research that. It was kind of just my
Okay.
imagination. Yeah. But
Sure.
I'm sure if you look at, I did research some of those abandoned buildings and
Okay.
orphanages did pop up.
Yeah.
And there were some where people said that there were some creepy, sightings,
Mm-hmm.
cold spots. You hear about those often.
On cold spots all the
And
time.
oh, yeah.
My basement is
And
perpetually
whispers.
haunted.
Right, yeah, and whispers, and stuff. So that was fun, and I did
Yeah.
do some research on famous haunted places in the
Okay.
United States. A
Hmm.
couple of them were like universities where you don't go to that floor, like the fifth floor of the university. You don't go to that one, and so that was kind of fun. So that
Yep.
kind of like fed my idea. But the idea of a basement as
Hmm.
being the place,
Hmm.
the one of the villains in the story is Mr. Davis, and readers of my children's series will recognize that name because his son ends up being the main villain in my
Okay.
children's series.
Sure.
So he uses the basement as a place to punish the children, and so
Sure. Yeah.
I did a lot of research on that too, and basements were, yeah, they could be really scary.
It's funny though, and
Ooh.
let's talk about basements for a second, because when I had my children and they were little, I always remember being terrified of going down to the basement. Even with every single light on, I was sure that if I made it out alive, it was miraculous.
hmm
And so, I remember as a kid, like pounding up the basement stairs, taking two, three at a time, um, all these horrible things. So when I have my kids, I'm like, I'm not gonna, I'm not even gonna tell them a story about the basement ever being scary. It's just
hmm
not going to be a thing. And yet they're scared of the basement. So are we born with some innate instinct, Ruth? Do
There's so
tell.
many movies and books though, where things, I mean, even Home
Probably.
Alone, right, has the
True.
scary basement
True.
with the big furnace who wants
The
to
big
eat
persons,
him.
yeah.
I mean, come on. So yeah, I think it's ingrained. And even we had a chance to visit the Biltmore Estate in Asheville, North
Oh, yeah.
Carolina, and
Yeah.
they have a basement, right?
Okay.
This massive basement where there's like a swimming pool and a bowling alley, and you go down there as part of the tour. And even
Yeah.
as part of the tour, where you're with 50 other people, it was spooky.
Yeah.
And the attic
I
too.
believe it.
Attics are in my book too. Attics are spooky
Okay.
and basements. And so I pulled aside the tour guide and I said, okay, be honest with me. Is this place haunted? And he just laughed. And I said, come on, you can tell me. You don't have to tell everybody else, but tell me. This place has to be haunted. My goodness. 250 rooms, come on, a basement and an attic. And he just laughed. He goes, well, I'm not going to lie, but some of the workers here have said after dark, when they're closing up stuff,
Mhm.
they've gotten some vibes. And I said, I knew it. I knew it. So, yeah,
I
that
get,
basement was creepy.
I would be the worst person to try to prove that ghosts exist or prove that they don't exist. It's because I feel like I'm constantly having a vibe because I have an overactive
Me
imagination.
too.
So as far as ghosts
Me
exist, I
too.
100% think they exist because they're definitely in my mind.
Yeah. You just get that creepy feeling
Yeah.
sometimes. And in
Yeah.
our last house when we were moving, I always told my husband our last house was haunted. I just always had this creepy feeling. And he's just like, yeah, whatever. So we were moving out. We got everything out of the house and
Yeah.
we were already in the house we're in now. So we would go back to clean and get all the trash out of the old
Yeah.
house. And I was there by myself and I started in the dining room and had a big garbage bag full of
Mhm.
trash. So I went to
Mhm.
the back room to make one more check and I heard that bag rumple and I knew my husband was on his way over and I said, "Oh, is that you, Scott? Are you there?" And he wasn't in there. So I was like,
Oh.
"Oh, Ruth, it's your imagination, it's your imagination." So I left.
Yeah.
And later on he did show up thinking I was there but I had already left. So he went into the house and started getting stuff and he put it in that trash bag and
Mhm.
tied it up and just set it there and then went to a back room. And he heard some rumbling and some messing around in the dining room too. And he thought, oh, Ruth's here. He goes, Ruth, I'm back here. I went ahead and finished up stuff. And he didn't hear anything. And he went out there and it was just him. And he was like, okay, I'm out of here. And he left and he came home and he goes, you're right. I think there's something going on in that house. And I said, I told you. And he told me the same thing that happened to me. I said, you heard somebody like moving around in the dining room? He goes, yes. He goes, I'm telling you, I heard something. And it was enough to make me think it was a person. I thought it
Oh,
was
that's
you.
funny.
And
Yeah.
so we just laughed. And I said, see, our imagination, they can do crazy things to you.
It
Ugh.
is kind of funny, and I don't know what it is like. I mean, I know, like, if you look at ghosts from a spiritual aspect and the spirit world and things like that, that's I'm talking ghosts from an entertainment
Yes.
standpoint, not
Yeah,
necessarily like the spirit world for real.
exactly.
So just clarifying that. But there's something fun um about being scared. Why?
Yes.
Like, I kind of like there's times I'm like, gosh, I wish my house was haunted.
It just makes you
Like,
feel
I
alive.
just wish I could feel that little cold touch on the back of my neck and go,
Yeah.
"What? Who is it?"
Hmm. Me
I
too.
had a
I grew up with that. Scooby
yeah.
Doo and all these fun
Yeah,
ghost stories
exactly.
that I read, those books and everything.
Yeah.
And I remember watching that movie Paranormal Activity because I was
Oh,
all
well,
excited. I thought, ooh, a haunted house. Ooh, creepy. But as soon as it was revealed that it was a demon, I was like, okay, that's it.
I'm
I'm out
outta
of here.
here.
I'm out of
Yeah.
here. I don't want to go there. That is
Uh-uh.
really that crosses the line. And I'm like,
Yeah,
see ya.
we've now crossed into something a little
Yeah.
bit
I don't
too
want anything
too
to do with
real.
that.
No.
I like the old
No.
fashioned spooky ghost stories.
Just good old Adam's Family
Yes.
ghost stories. You
Yes.
just make them
Like
fun.
the haunted house at Disneyland. That's what I'm
Yeah.
all about.
Yeah, there you
Fun,
go. There you go.
spooky stuff.
Fun,
Yeah.
spooky stuff. Or like a little bit of Goosebumps type of a thing where
Yeah,
it's just
exactly. My son
yeah.
loved those books.
Yeah, it's
Exactly.
just fun.
Scary
It's
stories.
fun,
Yeah.
scary, but it's not necessarily like trying to make anything real or an argument
No,
for it.
no,
So,
nothing like
oh man, it's funny because when I first got married, we actually lived in my in-laws' basement,
that.
and I wasn't super keen on it because the bathroom was upstairs, and so if I had to use the bathroom
Oh.
in the middle of the night, I had to go
Oh
from the nicely
man.
finished off living area where we were through the cement, plywood wood shelves and all the shadows up these old stairs to get to the
Oh my
hallway to go to the
word.
bathroom. And I would psych myself out to the point that I told my husband, I said, you know what? There's a little old man and he lives in that back corner. I've seen him. And my husband's like, you have not seen a little old man. I'm like, I've seen him. I swear to God, every time I walk out. Well, then, of course, during the daytime, we were like looking. And the way my father-in-law had things stacked, if you turn the lights out, it looked like a little hunched over little
See?
old man. And I said, see? I said, there's a little old man. There's a little old man in the basement. Told you. And then one night I'm sneaking up the stairs, not going to lie. I'm psyching myself out, even though I know that this little old man is really my father-in-law's stuff. But it looks like an old man. I get upstairs. I beeline for the bathroom. Everything's dark. I shut the bathroom door. I turn on the light. And no joke, there was a bat in the bathroom. And it swoops down at my head. And I let out the most blood-curdling scream
Oh
at 2
my
a.m. in the morning.
gosh.
I woke up the entire house. My father-in-law to this day does not let me forget that moment.
That's awesome. Oh my gosh.
As you do, you psych yourself out so
Yes.
much, and then all of a sudden something real actually like practically hits you in the face like a bat.
You're
And
just
you're like,
asking for it.
"Ah!"
Yeah. It's so true. And just think of all the serial killers who use basements. I mean,
Right?
everything is basement. And so I
Nobody goes
had
to
to
the
have a
living room.
basement. Yeah,
Yeah,
nobody just hides all
goes
the
to the living
bodies
room.
in the
Oh,
living
here's the
room.
kitchen. Here's the kitchen. It's a creepy kitchen. I
Yeah.
mean, nobody
So
would
you
even buy that
have to
book.
have a basement in your spooky story. Yeah. So that's why I did it.
Oh, that's super fun.
And attics too. I do have
And
an
attics.
attic in there
Attics
too,
are
but it's not
creepy.
quite as scary as the basement. That's the
Yeah,
one.
that is true. You know, a lot of, well, I mean, we'll digress, but a lot of murders do happen in basements. I'm not going to lie.
And
When
they
you
hide the
watch cold case
bodies.
stuff, yeah,
They bury the bodies
they
under
do.
the basement.
Under the
Ah,
basement floor. So all of you who have basements, good luck.
sorry. Yeah, get them finished. Have them nice and finished. Carpet, all that stuff. But never have an unfinished basement. You're just asking for trouble.
And anyone listening to the podcast today is going to be like, darn, I needed to go get frozen pizza from the basement freezer. Forget that. We're
We're
having
going to
something else for
starve. Yeah.
supper.
We're
Make some
going to
cold
starve
cereal.
tonight. Yeah, cold cereal tonight, kids. Oh, man.
Oh my gosh. Oh, how fun is that? Okay, so we have The Secrets of Worthington Orphanage, which is set in 1922 and is the prequel, really, to the first 3 books in the series, which
Yeah.
take place in 1970s,
Yeah, in the
correct?
1970s,
Okay. All right.
76. Yeah.
All right. And if readers want to get a hold of these books, what's the best way to do that?
Worthington Orphanage releases on February 25th.
Hmm.
They're all on Amazon. You can head over
Awesome.
to Amazon and you can get my award-winning children's series and The
Yep.
Secrets of Worthington Orphanage next
Yep.
week. I'm so
Yeah.
excited. 5 more
Super
days.
fun.
Yay.
Yay. And so, yeah, so if you have kids who like to read some fun, creepy, clean, not gory, not horror, but just that fun kind of jump scare
Yeah.
type thing, these are some great books because you can trust Ruth's writing, and Ruth likes to honor the Lord in all that she
Yeah.
does too. So this is cool. So super, super fun. I can't wait to get my hands on it.
Oh, great.
5 more days. This will be cool. And then I won't be in my basement anymore. I'll be moving upstairs.
Yeah. You go down there, take a flashlight, turn on all the lights.
Turn on the lights. Oh, Ruth, thanks so much for being with us today. This has been so much fun.
Thanks for having me. It's a blast. I love talking ghosts with people who love ghosts.
Right? I know. It's so much fun. Woo!
Thanks so much.
Thanks. And that's a wrap for today here at Mammoth Musings. I hope you join us again. And if you want to, be sure you like and subscribe here at your favorite podcast player or on YouTube, because you won't want to miss all the wonderful alerts that let you know when we have another conversation for you to eavesdrop on.